deliver some consistent value drivers to shareholders in the short term and in the long term. In terms of our team, we're a very small team. All of us are seasoned oil and gas specialists. I myself have been working in the oil industry for the last 40 years, mainly actually here in the UK, but in the noughties in this decade I've been spending a lot more time out in Asia. I spent quite a bit of time in Indonesia and Vietnam, which probably gives you an indication of some of the assets we've been looking at. But I'm supported by a very strong team which covers all the areas of an oil and gas company. And I should say that right now we are a very small cap. Our market cap is 2.5 million. We're listed on AIM and we're trading at 0.85p. But over the last 8 months we've been doing a number of placings and raises to support the portfolio we've been acquiring. As I said, the team's multidiscipline. It provides all the skill sets that we need to put deals together. My area of speciality is actually developing oil and gas fields. I take discoveries through to full commercialisation, and I've worked with the large majors like the Conocos and the BHPs, and during the noughties working for the small independents. But I'm supported by Ross Warner, who's our legal and commercial director, Dan Jorgensen, who's our finance director, and we've got Greg Marwini, who's our VP of operations based in Indonesia. In terms of our strategy, it's a two-country strategy. People ask why. Indonesia and the UK. Indonesia, for those that may know Asia, I mean that part of Indonesia has been in the news quite recently. But Indonesia is a large hydrocarbon basin. There's a lot of production in Indonesia. I think there's a lot of debate about whether it's between Romania and Indonesia with the actual founding of the oil industry. So there's a lot of oil and gas, onshore and offshore. If any of you know Indonesia, it has a certain risk profile. In terms of actually technical risk, finding oil and finding gas, it's very low. I often jokingly say if you take a scaffold pole and drive it into the ground, you can probably light at the end of the scaffold pole. It's not difficult to find hydrocarbons in Indonesia. The challenge is dealing with the commercial and the regulatory framework, and things do take a long time in Indonesia. So by having a two-country strategy, I came back to the UK in March to take over the role as CEO, and was very pleasantly surprised to see the amount of activity here in the UK in the oil and gas sector. And we made an acquisition, and we've been making more acquisitions. What do I like about the UK? Well, there's significantly larger sizes of opportunity, but I just like the fact there's a lot of activity. But the difference between the two-country strategy is in Indonesia, we're very much focused in onshore oil and gas production. In the UK, we're interested in offshore oil and gas production. And I'll explain a bit more about the asset base. In terms of what we've been doing over the last 8 months, as I said, I took over in April. We've been doing a lot of fundraising supported by our long-term shareholders, and that has helped to underpin the asset base that we've been building up. We've been acquiring an asset here in the UK via investing into a vehicle called Eagle. That was the acquisition of an interest in the Badger prospect, and I'll explain what that is. Then we made an acquisition, starting an acquisition in Indonesia called the Bongkamas PSC. And then just recently we announced our taking an interest in the Colta prospect. So what are we about? Well, in the oil and gas industry, it's all about moving the asset up the value chain. And those of you may or may not be familiar with the oil industry, we start off talking about exploring oil and gas, and there's a certain risk profile with exploration. We then move, once we've discovered the oil or the gas, we then move it into what's called an appraisal phase, where we're trying to determine the size of the prize, and then we go into the development phase, and then ultimately we go into production. Now at each of those points, there's an exit for us, exit for shareholders. And so what we're looking to do is move assets up the value chain. So we've got 3 assets that we've been acquired over the last 8 months, or in the